Let me ask you something. What if I told you there's a fruit, a completely ordinary fruit, the kind people eat for breakfast, that has been banned by governments, that arrived in its homeland inside a slave ship, that carries the name of one of the most infamous captains in naval history, and that if you eat it the wrong way, you can fall into a coma and die? You'd probably assume we're talking about some rare exotic thing found deep in a hidden rainforest, right? Wrong! This fruit is the official national symbol of an entire country. It's woven into the culture, the music, the morning tables of millions of people. And in the United States, it is still illegal to import it fresh. Its name is Ackee, and its story is far heavier than it looks.
Act 1. Africa, the ship, the arrival.
To understand Ackee, you have to start where almost nobody starts. West Africa. In countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Ackee had been growing for centuries. But here's the strange part. Nobody really ate it. Not as food. It was used as soap, as folk medicine. The bark was used to stun fish in rivers, making them easier to catch. Ackee was useful, but it wasn't valued. It was the background noise of the landscape. Then came the slave trade. Around 1778, Ackee arrived in Jamaica. The most widely accepted theory among historians is that it came aboard a slave ship, tucked among belongings, seeds, the scattered fragments of lives being violently uprooted from the African continent. There's no precise record, no official date, no name carved in stone. What exists is the botanical evidence and the brutal logic of history. The fruit arrived during the same period, along the same routes, on the same ships that were transporting human beings as cargo. And here's the first paradox of Ackee. A fruit that arrived as cargo during one of the darkest chapters in human history would go on to become, decades later, a symbol of pride and identity for the very same people who had been brought alongside it. But before we get there, there's a character in this story you've almost certainly heard of before. And no, he's not Jamaican.
Act 2. Jamaica identity, Captain Bligh.
1789. The HMS Bounty is somewhere in the South Pacific when the crew mutinies against their captain and sets him adrift in a small lifeboat with 18 men. The captain survives. He navigates nearly 4,000 miles to safety through open ocean with almost no supplies, and he enters history as the man at the center of the mutiny on the Bounty. That man was Captain William Bligh. 4 years after the mutiny in 1793, Bligh was in Jamaica, and he was so struck by the Ackee tree that he took samples back to the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in England. It was the first official encounter between European science and this fruit. And in his honor, the botanist who classified it gave it the scientific name it still carries today, Blighia sapida. The national fruit of Jamaica carries the name of a British captain famous for a mutiny. Colonial history has a certain irony that stings, doesn't it? But back to Jamaica, because unlike West Africa, where Ackee was overlooked in the kitchen, in Jamaica it thrived, in every sense of the word. The climate was perfect, the soil was rich, and the Jamaican people, who were building their own identity inside one of the most violent systems in modern history, found in Ackee something that was entirely theirs. Combined with salted codfish, the cheap protein that colonizers provided to enslaved people, Ackee created a dish that is today the national dish of Jamaica, ackee and saltfish. If you talk to any Jamaican living abroad in London, Toronto, New York, and ask them what they miss most about food from home, that's the answer. Ackee and saltfish for breakfast. Usain Bolt, the fastest human being in recorded history, has publicly said he eats this dish before competitions. From a slave ship's cargo hold to the breakfast table of the greatest sprinter who ever lived. That is the arc of Ackee. But there's a side of this story that Jamaica learned the hardest way possible, because Ackee, when treated carelessly, kills.
Act 3. The poison, the sickness, the banny.
Inside unripe Ackee, there's a toxin called hypoglycin A, and this compound does something very specific and very dangerous. It blocks your body's ability to produce glucose. In other words, it causes your blood sugar to crash, suddenly, dramatically. The result has a name, Jamaican vomiting sickness. It starts with violent vomiting. Then comes mental confusion, extreme muscular weakness. In severe cases, seizures, hypothermia, coma, and death. The worst part, there is no established minimum toxic dose. There is no safe threshold scientists can point to. It depends on who ate it, when it was harvested, how it was prepared. For centuries, Jamaica lived with periodic outbreaks of this illness, particularly during winter months, when the fruit hadn't fully ripened, but people harvested it anyway. And so, generations of Jamaican knowledge built a rule that is passed down like a family secret on the island. You don't pick Ackee. You wait for it to invite you. When Ackee is ready, it opens on its own. The pod splits apart, revealing the soft yellow flesh and glossy black seeds. Jamaicans call this moment the Ackee smiling, or yawning. Only when it has opened naturally, on the tree by itself, only then can you touch it. Before that, hands off. And even then, only the yellow inner flesh, called the areole, is edible. The seeds and the inner membrane still contain toxic levels of hypoglycin even in a fully ripe fruit. All of that gets removed before cooking. In 1900, Trinidad banned Ackee entirely after recording fatalities. The fruit was outlawed across the whole island. In the United States, the FDA banned the import of fresh Ackee in the 1970s. It wasn't until the year 2000, after scientists developed reliable methods to detect hypoglycin A, that canned versions began to be authorized. And even then, only from specific processing facilities, each individually approved by the US government. Today, if you try to enter the United States with fresh Ackee in your bag, customs will confiscate it. No discussion.
Final act, closing reflection.
So what exactly is Ackee? It's a fruit nobody wanted in Africa. That arrived in Jamaica as disposable cargo on a slave ship. That was named after a British captain notorious for a mutiny. That requires your patience before you can touch it. That is banned in several countries. And that became, despite all of that, or maybe because of all of that, the proudest symbol of an entire people. There's something deeply Jamaican in that story. Taking what was thrown away, taking what arrived through violence, taking what the world didn't know what to do with, and turning it into identity, into art, into food. The next time someone mentions a country's national symbol, think about Ackee, because sometimes the most powerful emblem of a culture is exactly the thing that survived when it had no right to. I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe Awesome Food Tales.